Hey everybody, this is NOMED here, and I just wanted to record a disclaimer for the beginning of this episode. The characters in this episode experience murder, suicide, and sexual abuse. We also will be spoiling the whole game, the characters' backstories, and all of the various endings. And we are not super deep into the lore and conspiracy theories, so if we get something wrong, we apologize. Thanks a lot, and here's the intro. Hello and welcome back to Two Gamers One Podcast. Today we're going to talk about the Silent Hill 2 remake. We don't really have a structure, I guess. Brewski already had some thoughts that he was going through here, so maybe he wants to start by talking about Eddie.
Yeah, sure, I can start talking about Eddie.
You seemed very passionate as soon as you sat down. You were ready to talk about Eddie.
Yeah, no, since I just finished this game and just got the platinum, I've seen most things I think the game has to offer. So what I was just talking to you about was, I haven't played all the way through the original, but one of the scenes I have seen from the original that really stood out to me was the scene with Eddie. With Eddie in the original, there's a scene where Eddie in the original is eating pizza, right? And he's in a bowling alley.
Yeah,
and
pizza
James,
Bowl-orama.
Yeah, and so James comes in and, one of the things James says is like, how can you be eating pizza at a time like this? Acting like he's crazy. Like it's getting real out there. There's monsters and there's a girl that's in danger out there we need to find. Like what are you doing sitting here on your fat, lazy butt eating pizza? Come on now. But then in the original, the remake, it happens in a theater, which I actually do kind of like that change. Mm. I like the atmosphere of the theater and how he's sitting there, just relaxing and potentially wanting to watch a movie. I thought that was actually a good change. I like that. But, he's eating ice cream instead this time. When James talks to him, James just like, you coming with me? And he's like, oh, now you want me to go with you? And he's just like, never mind. It's just such a different approach. I'm not saying I dislike exactly the way they did it in the remake, because like I said, I do like the change of the setting and whatnot. I love the theater, and I love him eating ice cream with his hands, with his bare hands.
It's supposed to make him look crazy, because what kind of animal is going to eat ice cream with their bare hands? It's supposed to start to kind of show more of Eddie's insanity.
Something's going wrong.
Yeah, because at that time, the only time you ever saw him was throwing up, and that was it. He was throwing up, and he was scared.
And and the way he was acting there made sense, because he was acting like, when you run into him at that point, he's like, oh dude, I don't know what happened. I walked in here and there's a dead guy, and seeing that dead guy made me sick, and I'm puking, and I'm so scared. Like, what happened? I don't know. And so when you run into him at that point, you're like, you kind of feel bad for him, like, oh man, this guy's been traumatized by something that he, wink wink, had nothing to do with, right? Right. But then we run into him in the theater, and he's sitting there eating ice cream with his bare hands, acting so nonchalant about what I think most normal people consider a pretty serious situation. You're in this weird town that...
Well, we don't know what his world looks like to him.
That's true. But
I'm assuming it's cold, though, because every time he talks, you can see his breath.
Yes.
So it's like he's forever trapped in a freezer.
Yeah, so I don't know if you see that in the scene where you first run into him in the bathroom, he's puking, which I don't even know if he really pulls us out of the toilet well enough to tell, but I do remember that. You do see breath.
Definitely see it.
You see the steam.
Theater.
Yeah, in the theater. Yeah, I do remember that. So yeah, it's a very astute observation on your part. But yeah, you're right. So when I first was going through it, though, I didn't know what was happening, right?
Right.
I thought that... Well, I was kind of confused about the whole thing. I was like, how is it that this guy is sitting here eating ice cream with his bare hands with these monsters running around? How is it this little girl is running around with monsters running around?
You didn't realize that there were different worlds for different
Exactly. And truthfully, I didn't even start to... I mean, you probably know it. By the way, I was talking as I was playing through. I was kind of confused through most of the game. I was like, I don't really understand what's going on here. But then, like, when I got to Angela, and I remember I was talking to you about it, I was like, well, James was saying, like, he said it's hot as hell in here, right? And Angela's like, yeah, like, that's the way it always is for me. And then you point out, oh, well, that's because that is her, that's what Silent Hill's doing to her.
Yep.
And James didn't feel it usually, because that's not what Silent Hill's doing to him. And then I slowly started to piece together, like, oh, well, actually, I think you're the one pointing out to me, too, like, the little girl. That's how she was able to run around.
Because she has
so carefree.
She hasn't done anything wrong, so she doesn't have an evil world.
Yeah.
To her, it's just a world.
Yeah, so that's how, like, you can run to her, and she's just sitting there, like, on the side of a fence, kicking her legs, acting happy, or, like at a piano, just, playing away, as if she has not a care in the world. So then it kind of started to make some sense. But at first, I was sort of thinking, like, like that seems really weird that Eddie is sitting there just eating ice cream with his bare hands. I mean, his hands are just covered with, like, it looks like pinkish goo, like he's probably eating strawberry ice cream or something. I was like, that just seemed like an awfully strange thing to do. Because I'll tell you, if I'm stuck in a town, swarming with knife-wielding, nurse monsters are trying to kill me, and, looks like, things look like they're sacks of, Frankenstein flesh sewn together, chasing me and puking all over me. The last thing I'm going to be doing is sitting in a theater eating ice cream. Now, I love going to the theater and watching movies, but I'll save that for better times, right?
Well, that's why the original scene where he says that about the pizza is funny because because he's like, who would be eating pizza right now?
Yeah, and that's exactly why I'm torn on this, because I like the way they actually did it in the remake, but at the same time, like, I feel like completely removing the part where James says that to him, it does take something away, because, like, I relate to James responding that way. Like, I mean, I've never obviously been in this exact situation, but...
Like, you haven't? That's news to me. I didn't know.
Surprise! Been some crazy situations, never one quite like this, but I think if I was in James' situation, and I was like, I think I'd be begging for a normal person that I could just, like, hang out with, that could, give me a little bit of comfort. And if I ran into a guy like that, I think I'd be saying the same thing, like, dude, like, how can you be sitting here, like, eating pizza or ice cream? Like, this is a Friday night, in this kind of situation. I don't know. I mean, I guess I like it both ways. I just wish they'd also found a way to work in the, how can you be doing this at a time like this, is somehow in the remake. I wouldn't even call that a complaint. That's just sort of, a thought, because because like I said, I do like the way they did it in the remake. It's not bad at all. It's not a downgrade. It's just different,
Right. Well, I know you have very strong feelings on Eddie overall, though, too, not just.
Oh yeah, you want to talk? You want to talk about that? Yeah. So at first, I actually did feel a great bit of pity and sympathy for Eddie, because he kind of alludes to the fact that, because I think I forget if it's the third time maybe you run into him, and there's that dead person. I think you're like in a cafeteria, maybe a prison.
Yeah, the prison. Yeah.
Yeah. He was talking about how, somebody, I think maybe that's one of the first times where he really talks about, like, oh, like somebody been making fun of him, and, then he, of course he's found this guy dead, of course. He was joking about everything, right? It's like, oh, I'm just kidding. Yeah, this guy was already here dead. Just playing with you, James.
Yeah, well, the way they recorded that scene in the remake, the pauses and the way he talks is way more dramatic and uncomfortable than in the original. I mean, all the voice acting I think is better in the remake. The way he talks and delivers it, he like literally stares at him for a bit too there, and then he's like, "Oh, I'm just messing with you," and moves the gun away.
It was really weird.
He did it in a very believably uncomfortable way.
It was really well done. So I think if this was real, or some similar situation happened in real life like this, I'd be crapping my pants. I'd be like, there's a dead guy here. This guy's acting shady / sus as fudge. I'm kind of scared for my life here.
Well, in a smidge of conspiracy theory territory, if you get close to any of the bodies that he quote unquote didn't kill,
that he totally didn't kill,
they all look like James.
Really?
Yeah, they're all Jameses.
Really interesting.
Very similar, but they do the lighting and stuff, and the way they position them. It's always in a way that you can't totally say for sure, but it looks just like James.
Yeah, I wonder if somebody can do one of those game breaks and like move the camera down and maybe even adjust the the model so you can see the face a little bit better. Because
there is 2 YouTube episodes from game breaks. I wonder if he showed any of that. I can't remember.
Because some of those game break episodes are pretty interesting because it shows you stuff like this that you can't really tell with normal gameplay.
I think it's the same for the body in the chair in front of the TV as well.
Oh, actually,
that key. I think that's supposed to be James too.
Actually, I was going to ask you about that. I'm glad you mentioned that because I know we haven't finished talking about Eddie here, so not to go down a rabbit hole here, but I was going to ask you about that, like if that was just random or who the heck or what the heck was that? Because there's
a lot of conspiracies because that's not in the original game, I don't think.
Because shortly before that, if I'm remembering right, so that was in the first apartment complex, right?
Yeah, I think it was in the first one.
And that is also, if I remember right, shortly after you run into Pyramid Head for the first time. Not when you fight him for the first time, but when you go into that hallway, and it's kind of red, and there's like, I don't know if it was like bars or what, but you can see through them, and he's just like kind of sitting there. Or standing. Is that what it was? Okay, yeah. So I remember the first time I saw that, I was kind of crapping my pants, like, holy crap, is he gonna attack me? Is he gonna be chasing me? And then, it's really not very long after that's where you run across that body in that chair.
Mm.
where you get the key. And it was kind of, I was kind of crap my pants, that whole area, because I was like, what happened here? Who is this? Like, I was like, is this body going to get up and attack me? Is Pyramid Head, about to come out from out of nowhere? I don't know. For me, that was actually one of the scary parts of the game, just because I didn't, I had no idea what was going on, like what was going to happen,
Right.
and I just knew something horrible was going to happen. It really didn't, right away at least, but they did a good job with the atmosphere.
Yeah, they
I'll put
did
it
a
that way.
great job making you uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so back to you
back-
hating on Eddie.
Oh yeah, back to Eddie. Yeah, so that's the point where I really started to think, okay, something's not right with Eddie, right? And of course, I hadn't played through the original, so I had no clue what to expect at all. But then when you run into him again in the freezer, of course, that's when you realize, like, okay, Eddie is a complete lunatic, and all the sympathy I had for him before really just melted away. I started to realize, like, because he was like, oh yeah, he's like, maybe, he's like, everyone, he's like, oh yeah, he's like, you want to call me a fat piece of crap? And like, he freaks out, starts shooting the guy he already killed in the head.
Oh yeah,
He's
yeah.
like, he's like, maybe it's true, maybe I am a fat, useless piece of crap. And I found myself thinking, like, dude, I kind of think you are. Like, I mean, not to be, like, mean, but, like, it's kind of like we were talking about recently, like, I started to realize, like, the way he responded to James, like, James did not do anything to this guy. James was more than, well, first of all, James offered to take him along with him. This guy could have hung out with James and probably survived this whole ordeal.
All under a hypothetical situation, because if those other Jameses are berating him, then his world is different. So he may see James differently.
Well, okay, so
if that's true.
So if that's true, that's something that, like, I'd never considered before, because playing the game,
You didn't notice.
I didn't know
You're
that
not
that was a
supposed to
possibility. I didn't notice. I mean, now, like, just from what I remember from the dead guy, I mean, I could see how that could possibly be the case. But to me, like, I was like, I get being treated bad. I get having those emotions that Eddie has. But when he's talking about, like, things like killing the dog and he enjoyed the fact that he saw it eating its own intestines or something.
Oh yeah, dude, I love that. That line
what?
was awesome.
No, I mean, I think that for his character, it was pretty cool. But I think, like, when I imagine being in front of somebody like that,
Right.
I'm like, dude, I really don't think I'd like this guy in real life. Like somebody like James or even Angela, I think I think in real life, I'd be fine. I'd probably like him, I mean, Angela in particular, I feel a great bit of sympathy for real, and that never changes, throughout the whole story.
100% character.
Yeah, I mean, she is a sad story. But with Eddie, it's like, I think about the fact he's complaining, oh yeah, people just say I'm a fat, lazy piece of crap. It's like, well, with all the stuff going on, I mean, again, I don't know what his world looked like, right? But if he's saying these people were chasing him and, they kept coming from out of nowhere and, attacking him, at least like with insults, right? Because he said something like that, right? Why aren't you hanging out with James who could, maybe back you up a little bit? Why aren't you trying, this guy's being friendly to you. Why don't you hang out with somebody who's being friendly to you?
What?
Why, if you're worried about being a fat, lazy piece of crap, are you literally sitting there eating a tub of ice cream with your bare hands? It doesn't get much more fat, lazy piece of crap than that. If he at least had a spoon, I could downplay it, but he did nothing to give me even an out on this to downplay it.
Well, it's supposed to show his character. I believe bullying and other things get taken too far, and they may even be used on somebody who has a low. Maybe he's not mentally very strong. On top of all that, and then when he started doing what he did, for his backstory, I think it also made his brain snap, and that's why he's fucking crazy. So I think that. It's just supposed to display what happens when you treat people poorly, basically. What you can create by accident based on your own actions.
And create a monster.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if he had been just killing the guys that kept showing up and calling him names and stuff, I would get that.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, James is killing things, too. It's just their worlds are all different.
Yeah, but the fact that he turns on James when James literally did nothing, James was more than kind to him, James was graceful, understanding. Because even when you could tell that James is like getting the look of WTF on his face, like especially with the third and even going into the fourth encounter,
right?
Where he was just like especially the fourth encounter, he was like, "Whoa, Eddie," he was like, "Take it easy."
Yeah, he does back off and puts his hands up. And,
yeah. There's no reason for Eddie to try and kill James and go psycho on him as he did, and that's the reason. Like my sympathy for him, like again, I think he's a well-made character, but that's also why like my sympathy for him like went to zero, and I was like when I fought him as James, I was like no mercy, and plus he's a pretty annoying. I think truthfully, I think in some ways he might be the hardest boss fight because you can get kind of lucky with him, like when you're using guns.
I was screaming at him last night. I was getting so mad.
Well, because like when you fight him with guns, I didn't have as much of a hard time with him with the guns. Maybe I got lucky because
You
like
just
you can
dodge
kind
behind the meat and then shoot a couple times, and you dodge behind the meat again.
yeah, I mean, because you can get kind of lucky or not. Because like it's especially like as the fight progresses,
As
the
they're
second or
moving.
third round. I can't
The
remember where
third one, they
he
start
shoots.
moving.
Well, they start moving, but was
Oh,
the
the second
part where he
round,
shoots
he
up and then the
makes it
steam,
misty. Yeah.
and then it's really hard to see. So you can kind of get lucky or unlucky. Like if you're like kind of waiting for him, sometimes he'll show up and you're just like bam. But other times you're kind of looking back and forth, and then you're looking over here, then you come back and he's already boom like showed up on the other side or in the middle, like somewhere where you weren't looking initially. But I didn't think it was that hard with guns. It was kind of annoying, like you had said. But when I was going through with my forget what it's called, no ranged weapons.
Yeah, no ranged weapons. You use the chainsaw for that, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay.
No,
Me
that
too.
would have been brutal without the chainsaw. It was it was a little more frustrating because like he would show up and I would I got better at like dodging and kind of hiding behind meat, and you could kind of, because when he'd show up you kind of, if you ran around meat you could kind of get a little closer to him and then hit him. But at first, like, he kept showing up and he'd pop me before I'd even realize he was there. I was like, what the heck?
Well, I think
Like
James moves so awkwardly sometimes, and that's on purpose.
Yes.
That's by design, by the way. He's supposed to move awkwardly.
Yes.
But sometimes he moves so awkwardly where I think I'm going to swing the chainsaw and hit him, and then Eddie just, I don't know if he sidesteps or maybe I just pointed wrong direction slightly, and then he moves and he just shoots me. And then I was just like getting
Yes.
so angry. And I'm like, this is the 5th time I fought him because I played through it to also pretty much get to platinum. Oh my god, it was just, I was screaming at my TV last night.
Yeah, well, I was getting pretty frustrated too because, kind of like you talked about the controls. Usually you get used to it and you don't really notice it until you're in a situation like you're in with Eddie where it requires a lot more finesse and precision, or at least you'd like a lot more finesse and precision.
Yeah, and then
And
God
so when
forbid a piece of meat's in the wrong spot, and then you bump off of that, and then
Yeah.
James is in the wrong position.
Yeah, and like the way that James wields the chainsaw too, like let's say like normally if you run into a nurse, all you do is you know like the rough kind of length that the chainsaw has when you attack with it. You know how he's going to attack, and so all you do is you just accommodate accordingly. But when when you it's pretty easy to hit a nurse, for example, with a chainsaw. No big deal, right? When it comes to a situation like this, like you're kind of freaking out. You don't know where he's at. You see him. You try and lunge over there to hit him, and he, because the way whenever you attack the chainsaw, the way he lunges forward, it's like he puts everything into it,
Yeah.
and you have to wait for the full cycle of him to kind of swing down and all the way to the floor, and then kind of regain his footing and pick it back up before you can move and do it again. Like I would miss Eddie. And I would be so frustrated. I'm like, dude, can I control my character?
Dude, my most
Like-
frustrating thing with the chainsaw is when he randomly starts an animation while you're just doing stuff.
Oh, we're like
Where
lifts
he'll
over
just
his
like
head.
lifts
He's
it
like-
over his head, or
like-
he'll do this funny stance, and it's like I push the dodge button to get out of it. I'm like, just stop doing that. Like, this is making
Yeah.
me mad.
Well, it would frustrate me too. And like at first, I was like, is there some sort of like taunt button I'm pushing?
I thought maybe if I pushed X too many times it was doing it, but I don't think so. I think that was just in my head.
Well, at first I thought I must be doing something, but I cannot, like, kind of like you're alluding to, like, I couldn't decipher anything I was doing or not doing that was causing it. Because at first I thought, okay, well, maybe I pushed a taunt button. No, that didn't seem to be it. And other times I was like, oh, did I stand still for too long? No,
Yeah, it's not an idle animation.
I don't think that, no, it's not. Because, like, when he would do it, like, there were times, like, I'd even be moving, and maybe I would even just, like, I'd turn, go to a door, and all of a sudden he would just stop in his tracks, lift the chainsaw over his head, and just be like, "Whoa," like he's a freaking barbarian, doing a victory cry.
Maybe it's like a way of them, I don't want to say nerfing the chainsaw because it's supposed to be all powerful, but maybe it's a way to just make using the chainsaw slightly more frustrating on purpose.
Well,
Everything about the design of how James moves and how he shoots and how he melees is all awkward on purpose by design.
Because he's not a fighter, he's just a regular dude that
Exactly.
got stuck in the situation.
And it was awkward in the original too, but you had awkward mixed with tank controls in the original, so that was that's way more annoying.
Wow, yeah, no, tank controls are, yeah, that's very difficult to go back to after playing
Well,
modern
thankfully we're
games.
Resident Evil players, so we will, when we replay tank controls, I think we both just pick it back up pretty quick.
Like riding an old bike or
Yeah,
something.
but to a layman, it might be pretty frustrating.
Yeah, if you don't have that muscle memory to go back to, so to speak,
But they
then it would
mixed.
be
But I think that's
tough.
why they made him awkward, is because he was weird to play to begin with, and they didn't want to make it too easy.
That would make some sense. But I'll tell you, when I first picked up the chainsaw, I really didn't like it because it seems so unwieldy. Just the way his animation is, like it takes so long. He kind of picks up and he slashes down, and it takes like it's really not that long of a time. But when you're in game and you're trying to do things quick, it kind of feels like it takes a long time, and it feels a little restrictive. So at first I didn't really like it because I was like, I wanted to have more freedom to just like slash left, right, whatever, real quick, But that's just not how the chainsaw works in this game. Like you have to really time it when you're attacking an enemy to, hit them with that big, arcing swoop.
Right. Well,
So I got used to it. I got to the point maybe I even liked it. But at first that's kind of how I felt. I was like, this feels really awkward and unwieldy, and kind of restrictive.
Now, I will say one thing that I like a lot, if I can find the quote. In the original game, when you kill Eddie, I think he says, like, he looks at his hands and says, a human being. Like, because he doesn't realize that he's killed Mary, so he's looking down at himself, like, oh my god, I've killed a human. In the new one, though, because of how graphics engines and stuff are now, it still gives you that feeling, though, because it's got, like, the slow pan on Eddie being dead and the blood coming out, and then up to James looking concerned, and it still has the same impact, I think. He just doesn't say the line.
Oh, yeah, that is another change that I did see. I honestly would say that's a bit more of a downgrade than the one with Eddie we're talking about, with the bowling alley versus the theater, because... Right. With this, like, I get what they're going for, because they, like you said, they have a better graphics engine, so I think they were trying to just show cinematically the emotion, just kind of let you understand. But at the same time, I think that you're really removing something that is a bit of a downgrade.
That's
with him not saying.
Cut. Most of them have been rearranged or placed in a way that make more sense. That's one of the very few lines that have been removed.
Because once I realized he said that in the original, I was like, oh, now, like, I think that you get more of the full effect in the remake once you realize that.
That's why the trophy after you kill him is called a human being.
But I think that, to me, it would have been better, especially somebody that hadn't played the original, if he had said it or thought it or something,
Right.
Like, oh my god, because he said something like, oh yeah, oh my gosh, I killed a human being, and to me there's more gravity with that, because it pinpoints, like, yes, that is what he's thinking. It makes sense he's upset about that, but when it doesn't say it, you're like, what is he thinking? Is he thinking like, crap, I gotta wash my hands now because this a-hole got me all dirty? I mean, you can imagine maybe he was upset about killing Eddie, but was he? You don't really know what he's thinking,
right? For
sure, at least.
But I think overall they did a really good job with Eddie.
Oh yeah, I mean,
they made you hate him, so they elicited an emotional response.
Yeah, Eddie. Yeah, I have a lot of emotion about Eddie. I mean, I have probably more emotion and thoughts about Eddie than any other individual character in the game.
I guess that's fair.
I mean, like, I have a lot of thoughts about James and Maria and really everybody in the game, but yeah, definitely, I'd say I got the strongest emotions about Eddie.
Well, I have the strongest emotions for Angela, and they're positive for me. But I think before I get into Angela, so there's multiple ways that people seem to get out or away or deal with whatever Silent Hill gives them, and I think Eddie might have wanted to die. I think that's another reason why he antagonized you at the end there. I think he might have wanted to die.
That makes sense. Like, he was so depressed. He didn't kill himself, but he was just kind of like, all right, like, I'm going to tempt fate here,
Yeah, and then you've got Angela, who gives up by walking up into the stairs into the fire. And then, James has a ton of endings. he can range anywhere from killing himself to leaving with Maria, to trying to bring his wife back to life, to going UFOs and stuff. I mean, his endings range pretty wildly.
Yeah, well, before we talk about the endings and our thoughts on the platinum and difficulty and trophy choices and all that, do you want to talk about your thoughts on Angela? Because I know you have. I know she was the most impactful for you. So
love Angela. She's my favorite character, and I think she would have made a good main character if they had changed some things. She could have been the playable character. I like how it deals with something that most games don't really talk about or tackle at all, and that's sexual abuse. And her fighting her attacker. I actually don't think she doesn't deserve to be in Silent Hill. I think that Silent Hill is torturing her instead, for no reason.
Yeah, because unless there's some details that it didn't give us, it doesn't seem like she did anything wrong.
All the newspapers and everything, her reactions, the way she talks, it all lines up to her basically just taking revenge on her father for what he did to her. I think the one newspaper said something like she basically just repeatedly stabbed him to death. But there's a whole bunch of stuff that I loved about how they redid the battle with Abstract Daddy. In the original, you were just trapped in this tiny little room, and there were these pistons going in and out of the wall to represent that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all it was. You just stood in this little room. I love that in the remake, it's like you're Angela. It's like he's chasing you through the hallways of their apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And then the only places that is safe is the little closet with her teddy bear and drawings that she used to hide in. As you progress through, you end up destroying these TVs that have like slight memories of her father antagonizing her, or when you get to the last one, it's her finally stabbing him. I think it's supposed to represent something that she might have did as a girl, which was, I'm too little to hurt you, but I can hurt something you care about. And I think she might have destroyed his TV when she was little. So you do that 3 times, and then you get the last battle with him. And then once you finally defeat him, she picks the TV up and just throws it on top of his body, and then starts kicking the shit out of him and screaming at him. But and his design is so fucked up too. It's literally 2 people flesh glued to a mattress, basically to represent the dominant him, which I think is really it's wild, and I've never seen anything like that in a video game before.
Yeah, that was kind of the impression I got of the Abstract Daddy. Was it was kind of symbolizing sort of that situation with her, you know, like 2 people, you know, maybe one on top of the other. I mean, maybe doing something bad that he shouldn't be doing to her, you know, on the bed. And what exactly were those 2 creatures? Was that one creature looked like that? Was that 2 creatures? Like, was that just something spawned from Silent Hill? Was it?
I think it's
was
just
it actually
like any
her?
of the other flesh monsters. It's just 2 flesh bag creatures
Molded together,
like melted together.
Yeah.
But I think the way it's shaped is supposed to just be a symbol.
Yeah, but no, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's exactly what it's like. Is it's like kind of showing her journey as she would run from her dad, maybe find a bit of refuge, destroy something he loved, like his TV, and then because usually when you would destroy those TVs, like he would burst out, like he would like the boss was pissed.
Yeah, he blasts through the wall every time you destroy one.
Yeah.
I like all the scenes with her in general too. So she's the first person you meet when you enter Silent Hill, and she's in the graveyard, and she seems lost and confused, like she doesn't quite know where she is, but she knows something weird is going on at Silent Hill and warns you.
Yeah.
Basically.
So why did she keep going, and why didn't she just turn around and leave the city? Okay, she was looking for her mom.
Yes,
that's right.
I think her mom was one of the parents that would turn a blind eye to what was happening. So I think her entire life she's actually been like searching for her mom, quote unquote, like a person to take care of her, as she asks you before she goes up the stairs if you will take care of her. And James kind of just says no and takes a step back because he's uncomfortable. And then that's when she walks up the stairs and says the line.
Yeah, well, she's got a couple pretty awkward responses to James, because at one point James says something to her like, "Oh, I'm really happy to see you," and she's like, "What?" She's like, "Why would you? You know what I'm talking about? You remember that scene?" She's like, "What?" She's like, "Why? Why would you be happy to see me?"
Oh, that's
and
when she's
goes,
standing in front of the statue in the garden. Yeah.
Yeah, and James was like, "Oh," he's like, I thought her reaction was kind of strange, and James was like, "Oh, I just meant I'm happy to see you're safe," and she was like, yeah."
Well,
I was like, well, what else would James admit?
If you hear there's a line after you defeat Abstract Daddy, that's when she really breaks down, and I think other people did things to her too, because she thinks that's all James wants is that, and that's why he's helping her, and he literally is like, no, that's not, like he gives her a confused look and says, no, that's not what I'm after, and that's when she breaks down and cries and falls to the floor and says, what the hell does she say exactly? It's like, or you can force me like he always did, was her exact line.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then that's when she gives him grief, saying that, like, maybe you wanted Mary to go away, and stuff like that, and then he shouts no. It's the only time I think James yells in the whole game. He shouts no to her, and then she looks confused, and then she kind of takes a step back, and then she leaves. And that's when you gain control again. So I think a lot of other stuff might have happened to her that we just don't know about.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about her kind of antagonizing James like that, yeah.
Yeah, it was just for that scene. I don't really know why, but I don't know. She looks really confused, like she didn't mean to say it or something. And then there's the scene where she's thinking about killing herself with the knife, too, looking into the mirror, and you take the knife from her.
Yeah, because when you run into her again, you know, on the flaming stairwell, she's like, give me the knife back. And James like, no.
Oh, yeah, and then she's like, oh, you're keeping it for yourself then, huh?
Yeah. So it does seem like she's kind of got a death wish too. Because if you hadn't taken the knife from her, the impression I got was that she really would have killed herself.
Yeah, she's her walking. So no one actually truly knows what happens to her, but it seems to be insinuated that she just gives up.
And
that
lets
she
herself
can't
burn to death.
overcome Silent Hill. She gives up and walks into the flames.
Okay, yeah, well, I kind of wondered if that was what happened, but I wasn't really sure, because if she was saying, like, oh, this is what it's always like for me, I'm like, well, if she's always surrounded by flames, maybe it's, maybe she's not walking into the flames, like, to...
Maybe they're following her like they do, I don't...
Yeah, maybe she's just engulfed, like, she's just always surrounded by it, so for her, like, she's walking in the flames, which is where she always is anyway, is just surrounded by fire.
All these years later, none of us know whatever happened to her. The whole fan base seems to believe that was the sign of her giving up, because James wouldn't take care of her, she can't find her mom, what's the point anymore? So she just kind of walks off.
Well, I'm sure that James would have gladly let her stick around with him to escape Silent Hill.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd have helped her, but not the way she was looking for, I think.
But yeah, not like taking her as his wife,
Yeah,
and
he's like, no.
he's like, no,
No, thank you.
I'm not looking for that either. I'm not looking to force myself on you, but I'm also not looking to marry you. And
Yeah, he's not looking for anything for her. He just wanted to help her.
he's like, look, I see someone in this. We're both in a similar situation. I just thought maybe we could stick together. I could help you. That's about the extent of it, right? But it does seem like you get or at least for me, like I got a sense that Angela and Eddie both have a better idea of what's happening in Silent Hill than James, because they both allude to kind of knowing that. Like, I mean, from the very beginning with Angela, she's like, oh yeah, something strange going on in this town, and she kind of says things like that. As you run into her, that gives you the impression she kind of knows what's happening here. At least like she knows sort of what this place is, or at least has an inkling. And Eddie, he even blatantly says like, oh, well, we're all here for a reason. He's like, you're here.
He does say that. Yeah, I forgot he says that.
And so it was like, when I played through it the first time, I was like, I don't know how these guys know what's going on, but James doesn't seem to know. I have no idea.
I totally forgot he said that. That's an important line, actually, when you think about it. Like,
yeah.
Like, you're here for a reason.
He's like, you're no better than me. He's like, you and I are both the same.
Yeah, they're here for a reason.
I always wondered, well, I mean, ever since I played the game, at least, I've been wondering how he knows. Like, how does he know why he's there? How does he know why James is there? How does he... Because James seems to have no idea. Again, when I was playing through the first time, I didn't really know.
Well, James seems to think his wife died 3 years ago, when in fact it was like a week ago.
3 days ago, actually.
Yeah, it was like it just happened.
Yeah.
So he has no idea what's even going on with himself.
It's almost like when you have something really bad happen to you.
Yeah,
and
he's got a traumatic... Damn it. It's some kind of traumatic thing that happens to your brain and makes you forget or bury it.
Yeah, it's like where you literally put up some sort of mental wall so that you can't remember it.
Yeah.
It's like James seems to have an extreme case of that going on, where he's in extreme denial. But yet, it's an interesting barrier, because he remembers that she died. It's like a barrier came up blocking how she died, and that she was even sick, and the writing on the wall is, she died 3 years ago, James.
Right. Another character I'm a huge fan of is Maria.
I did like Maria,
she
actually.
is awesome. She's even cooler if they would make the DLC to play her story that they had on the PS2 version.
Are they going to do that? Have you heard?
I haven't heard anything, but they should. It's called One Wish, I think.
I can't believe they would leave that out.
Yeah, like, okay, so you remember the part after you go through the Jacks and I think it only happens in New Game Plus, but there's a building in front of you, and that's where you get the white chrism or whatever on a table, and she stops and stands there.
Oh, it's outside that house, right?
Yeah, she stops and she stands there kind of uncomfortable. In One Wish, that's where her stuff takes place. That's why she's uncomfortable by standing in front of it. But it seems like she forgets, because James asks her, have you ever been in there before? And she stops and she thinks for a little while, and she goes, no, I don't think I have. And then she snaps out of it, and you can keep going. But her story takes place in there, which is weird.
Yeah, it seems weird they would leave that out. So hopefully they're coming out with it. I mean, even if it's, paid DLC, kind of like, Resident Evil 4 did with Separate Ways with Ada, I'd be willing to pay for it just to see...
Yeah, I think in the original
to support them. And
I think it was like an hour long. It leads all the way up to like basically when she gets to the pier, and then you would play the game, and then you would meet her as James.
Okay, so maybe you can tell me a little bit more about Maria, because I think you know more about the universe than I do.
Well, she so as far as I can tell, she was created by Silent Hill itself. I don't know if it's the deity or however you want to call it, but they created her. Her only thing she wants is to find I think it's to find James in the end, but I think at first she seems to not know about James yet or something, so she's looking for anyone. And when she's in that mansion, there is a guy in there. I don't think you ever see him though. I think you only ever talk to him through doors. And she's like trying to help him because it's the first person she's ever found, and all she wants to do is seek out a person. And that game actually, that story starts with her sitting in front of the mirror in the strip club, and then you start playing essentially as her in there.
Okay, so she's
She's like upstairs in there.
Okay, so she is a real person or a real something.
She's a real being
She's
of some sort.
something that's made of flesh and blood that looks
Because she can leave in the Maria ending. You can take her with you. That's what happens.
So she's created by Silent Hill in the same sort of way that all these monsters are. Only she is not evil and trying to kill you.
Yeah, and she's recreated over and over again when she dies.
That's one thing I was kind of curious about too, is what's going on with her. Like, is that the same Maria that you keep on seeing? Because you see her die several times.
They don't ever really say, because she does act slightly different when you find her in the labyrinth. She acts really weird, and then she like rubs your face and says, "I am royal," see, and touches you. But then she's like got this weird smile, and she's just humming, sitting there doing nothing, which is unlike how she was acting before. But it seems like she's more obsessed because, I mean, she's supposed to be the final boss, sort of.
Well, that's the thing. Like, she kind of.
I don't know what it is.
Like let's say, like at the rebirth ending, like I think that's the last one I got. He calls her Maria. Like,
yeah.
What's his dead wife's name?
Mary.
Mary, right. He doesn't call her Mary. He's like, "I know what you are, Maria," and she was just like, "F you." Yeah.
Well, that's where she's sitting on the bed, I think, in the rebirth, right? No, that's the Maria
no. In the
ending
rebirth
is
one, she was standing by the window,
yeah,
right?
Okay. I think all of them she is, except for maybe it's the Maria one. She's sitting on the bed.
I think it's Maria. Yeah, where she's sitting on the bed. Yeah.
See, I think it's weird. I don't know truly what the last boss is. Is it Maria? Is it Mary? Is it what the hell's her name? She's from the first game. Because she kind of looks like her when she's inside the bag. She looks like a character from the other Silent Hill game.
Well, the impression I got was that it was actually neither. Like, despite the fact in the rebirth ending he calls her Maria, I think that whatever that thing at the end is, it seems apparent to me that it's not Maria.
It has a deeper connection to Silent Hill's deity itself. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
I think it might be the sister from the other game. I just can't remember her name. She's like one of the cult leaders.
You know, it's kind of funny. Like, when I have somebody to hash this out with. Like, it seems so much deeper than, like, you know, as I'm playing the game and just kind of running into this stuff, you know, the individual kind of story elements. But now, like, as we're kind of, you know, sitting here together, you know, looking at it from, you know, an altitude of 45,000 feet and kind of, you know, looking at it as a whole, you know, it seems, you know, far more interesting than, you know, taking each individual, like, component.
Well,
you know?
I got obsessed. So, for all of you guys out there, my history with Silent Hill is not huge. I always had a far away interest. I played a little bit of 4 when I was growing up, and then I watched the movies, which a lot of Silent Hill fans say suck, but I still think they're interesting. So I'd always had more of a passing interest and just had never gotten around to it. And then I played this one, and I got obsessed, and then I played the original afterwards, and then I played the remake another like 5 times, and I watched a ton of lore videos and history, and then I watched like character breakdowns, and then I played Silent Hill 3 and started 4 again. So I got super duper interested and wanted to know everything I could possibly figure out. So I'm still not even an expert on everything, and I could have said some stuff that may be slightly wrong or whatever, but I'm trying to get as close as I can, or at least what I feel about the characters anyway.
Yeah.
The impressions I got.
No, that's great. I mean, you have at the very least, I'd say you have a pretty good understanding of the Silent Hill story and franchise as a whole, because you've seen the movies, you've played the remake, I
did play the original.
Most of the originals.
I didn't play the first one. I tried it and I didn't really like it. I'll have to try it again. I played through the original 2. I played through 3. Played through most of 4. And then I've also played PT back in the day when it came out. And I played, what's the new one called? Short Message. I played Short Message as well.
So PT and Short Message, which system were those out for? Because the others were all for either PS1 or PS2, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not familiar with PT and Short Message.
Is a playable. It's called playable teaser, and you were not supposed to know it was Silent Hill until you played it and beat it. It was a demo for what was called Silent Hills at the time, and it basically revolutionized horror games. It created the looping horror game where you continuously go in you're in basically the same place all the time, but when you go through the door, things change and stuff like that. So it was on PS4, and it's been delisted for a very long time. Those PS4s go for like thousands of dollars. But somebody has remade it in the Unreal Engine on computer for free, so you can play it still. And then Short Message is on PS5, and you can still play it. That's the demo for Silent Hill F, I think.
Also, is that not a new Silent Hill game they're working on?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
But it's also its own contained story, like PT was. Like it's technically a demo, but I think it's more like a hype game because you play all the way through a story.
Okay, yeah, I think you told me about that one a while back, right?
Yeah.
And I think that maybe I downloaded it, maybe I started to play it. I can't remember, but
This was before this came out, so
yeah.
you still only had whatever small interest you might have ever had in the series before I got you to play this game.
Yeah, exactly. So I never really played through it or played that much into it. Like, I remember you suggesting it, but I didn't really do it. But yeah, you said it was pretty good, though, right?
I liked it.
So I'll have to check that out now that I played
I've
this
heard
game.
mixed things in the community, but I liked it. I thought it was cool.
Well, are the mixed things because they don't like the play style or the design, or is it because they don't feel like it feels like a Silent Hill game, or what are their complaints?
I think some of the things I was seeing was like it felt like a choose your own adventure. I don't know. A lot of people were complaining about games where you play as a female lately. I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know why they care about that.
I think the art design and stuff is cool personally. I don't know. There's some other complaints about it. I forget now because it's been. I think it came out like a year or two ago.
Well, so I don't know about the other Silent Hill games like 3 and 4 or even 1, if they had multiple endings, but having just played this one, where there's 8 different endings,
The original,
having different paths doesn't seem like it's out of the. It doesn't sound like that's
out of the realm of what Silent Hill would do.
Yeah. So I don't know why they would complain about that. Now I haven't played it myself, so I can't say for sure, but it seems like a odd complaint. Well, it seems like I like having the multiple endings. It's
or new fans too, technically. Like I've always had a passing interest in. Maybe you've like seen some stuff and thought about it before. Or more of a fresh perspective on what's going on in the Silent Hill world.
Yeah.
But I think when I played it, I got obsessed, and I just want more.
So, I think what you said there at the end, makes some sense because just like I alluded to, like I hadn't played the original, so I played 2. Like to me, now the remake is the standard, right? I mean, I've gone back and watched some of the videos talking about some of the differences, so I'm aware that they're there. But for the most part, Silent Hill 2, the remake, is my standard.
It also seems like they kept at least the important things exactly where they're supposed to be and how they're supposed to be.
Well, yeah, other than the 2 that we talked about, like, the videos I've watched highlighting the differences, like, they either seem like they were minor or improvements or
expanded on, like, bigger areas.
Yeah. Or just, like, or the dialogue's maybe kind of remixed. It doesn't really take anything away. So I feel like it's a pretty faithful remake for the most part here. So, you were just talking about your experience with the series. So for me, I've always really loved survival horror games. This type of game.
This is like the survival horror game series besides Resident Evil.
Well, I was gonna say,
Resident Evil invented it, but they invented a different. So theirs is like survival horror. Theirs is more like monster in your face or conserving my ammo so I can survive and stuff. Theirs is more psychological and thinking about like a deeper thing. They're supposed to make you uncomfortable.
So yeah, like while they're both survival horror, technically, like they're under that umbrella. They're 2 different branches, I'd say, right? And so Resident Evil,
they're at the top too. They're the best.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I would say, I know you have a slightly different opinion. I would say that The Last of Us is also pretty high up there, even though like it's a little bit newer series, doesn't have as many games, but very high quality. I like the world they created. We can talk about that in a minute, but
okay.
I want to say here with under that umbrella of survival horror, I would say that Resident Evil, maybe that's because I have more experience with the series, but I would consider that more like true survival horror. But really, they're both kind of that same kind of genre, but Resident Evil is more like the post-apocalyptic kind of survival horror. Because most of the games, even if it's not post-apocalypse, it's usually a city that is post-apocalyptic after the outbreak and whatnot, which I would say The Last of Us is that same type of survival horror.
I would put them in the same line if I was going to.
Yes, that same category.
But then Silent Hills is a different line.
Like you said, yeah, this is more psychological horror or psychological survival horror. So same sort of overall category, but different subcategory. Yeah.
Well, I think 2 is. I think the reason why they remade 2 specifically first because it is a really good standalone. Like we could never even say if you would like a different Silent Hill game because they're all wildly different games.
Yeah, and in a way, I kind of like and respect that because it's in many ways, that's very similar to the Resident Evil series. Like, each individual Resident Evil game is very different. I mean, there's some that are very similar. Like, 2 and 3 are very similar, but if you compare 2, like the remake, especially the remake, like compare the remake of 2 with the remake of 1. Like, 1 is still, even though the tank controls may be gone, it's still very similar to what the original was like. You know, like with the fixed camera angles and stuff like that.
Right.
And then you compare even 2 and 3 to, I mean, they're still pretty similar to 4, I guess, the remake, right? But compare that to Village, or what's 8 called? No, 8 is Village. Yeah, 7 is
7 is just called
Biohazard,
which is
yeah,
weird
right.
because what do they call it in Japan? Biohazard.
Yeah, but I feel like it's very different feelings, especially considering the fact that 7 and 8 are first-person shooters, basically.
Yeah, that's true.
That sort of style.
In a way.
And then you have 5 and 6, which I know 6 gets a lot of hate, which I think is undeserved, by the way. But
I brought it up a lot on our podcast already, and we only
yes.
got like 5 episodes.
Yeah. No, listen, I feel like this is kind of like AVGN with Castlevania, I bring it up all the freaking time. Resident Evil, especially when you're talking about survival horror, it's hard to avoid
naturally, it was going to come up in our conversation here.
Of course, yeah. But, I still, to me, within the Resident Evil umbrella, I put, pun intended, because umbrella, Resident Evil, I still put them under the same umbrella because there's still kind of that same feel and type of Resident Evil game.
Yeah, so Silent Hill is very, at least, okay, so for the first 4, I know everybody hates the other one, so I haven't played I haven't played Downpour.
It's all downhill from here.
It's Downpour.
Literally.
Yeah, I mean, that might be how it felt. I haven't played Downpour or Homecoming or Origins or any of those ones, but...
Are those all on PS2 also?
No, those... Well, I think Origins might be on PS2, and then Downpour and Homecoming's on PS3. And then I swear there's one on the Wii. I can't remember what it's called, though. But I heard it's really not good. But I haven't played those from, the first game, when I started playing it, it felt like Resident Evil, but shittier to me. No offense. That's the first game that those guys had ever created in their lives, so I can see why it would be wild and weird. 2, absolutely fantastic when I played the PS2 game. I could really play either one, the remake or the old one. I really don't care. I love them both. And then 3, I really, really, really like. 2 and 3 have similar DNA when you're playing them. 4 even to some extent, but it's got a totally different type of system for play.
Mm-hmm.
But 2 and 3 have very similar styles of play, but you need to understand who Heather is to really understand the game. So what I did was I watched a video explaining basically a full breakdown of the first game, and then I played 3.
Okay, yeah. So for me, as I mentioned, I've liked Resident Evil almost from the beginning, because before Resident Evil 2, I think even came out, like Resident Evil 2 might have already been out, but I got introduced to the franchise pretty early, so I've really liked this kind of stuff for a long time. But as far as Silent Hill goes, my earliest experiences with the franchise, which were fairly limited, there was a guy when I lived in the dorms in college who had at least some of the Silent Hill games, and he was telling me that Silent Hill 2 was amazing. He's like, dude, you gotta play this game. It's so great. You like Resident Evil, you're gonna love Silent Hill. And
probably would have too if you played it back then.
I might have, But anyways, I remember putting it in. I don't really remember a whole lot about it because I wasn't familiar with the franchise. I mean, I kind of had heard the name, but it was really no different than any other franchise I'd never heard of. So I put it in, and I just remember, I could be remembering this a little bit wrong, but I just remember there being a lot of fog, and I was like, dude, this game, I was confused. I have no idea what's going on. I can't see anything.
Yeah, there's
the graphics are crap.
I guess if you compare it to Resident Evil 4 on the same system, yeah, I would say.
Which maybe I wasn't.
Are pretty piss poor in comparison. But I do like them. They have their own charm. But I can see why you would think that back then when you're going through the new games that are coming out, and that's what came out. That's what it like.
Well, I was used to playing games like, Final Fantasy 9, Final Fantasy 10, like Resident Evil 4.
Yeah, and
I just remember...
And 10 and RE4 are on the PS2, and that's a wildly...
Yeah.
That's a huge graphical jump between that and Silent Hill 2 on the same system.
Yeah. So, I put it in, my friend had been hyping it up big time, so I put it in.
Oh, I hate when people hype shit up to me, because then I always hate it at first.
Yeah, and that's probably what happened here. I say the same thing with movies. If I go into a movie with super high expectations, 90% of the time I'm going to be disappointed because it'll never be as good as I imagine it in my mind. But if somebody really talks it down, there's a far greater chance I'm at least not going to hate it.
With something positive, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So with this game, it was just kind of a recipe for me not to be able to get into it. I was in college too, so I didn't really have a lot of time to just be sitting around gaming anyways, with, friends and homework and work and everything, So if I, especially if I was borrowing a game, but I hadn't bought, I was borrowing it, and I had even a whiff of garbage, I just didn't have time for it. So I really was not impressed, and so I just quit playing it. So But then, fairly shortly after that, one of my friends was having, a big like movie night or something over at their house, and we all go over there, and they're like, "Yeah, we rented Silent Hill."
Oh, dude, the first movie is good.
Dude, the first movie is good.
Second one
I
is
really
mid,
liked it.
but the first one is great.
I didn't see anything after the first movie. I only saw the first one, but it was actually really good, and it actually kind of piqued my interest. I was like, oh, because obviously I'd heard of Silent Hill because my friend and stuff, talking about it. But I was like, well, if this is Silent Hill, like it wasn't enough to make me actually go back and replay or try to play the game again, but it did pique my interest. I was from that point on, because I did enjoy the movie so much. I've always been kind of curious what Silent Hill's all about. I mean, the movie, one of the things that always stood out to me was you see Pyramid Head, and he immediately rips the flesh right off that girl's body in one fell swoop. I mean, like it's like he ripped it off her like we'd rip a blanket off our wives, to freeze her out in winter, to give her a hard time. But and it was just really well made. Just the way they did the church and everything. It was
a lot of that's from the first game. They basically mixed elements from the first two games into the movie, and then they added their own spin on stuff. Because Pyramid Head shouldn't be in any other part of the Silent Hill franchise, period, because of who he is. He has no business being anywhere else.
Oh, because he is specific to James, right?
He's James's guilt manifested to punish him. So
that's something else I didn't
exist anywhere else.
Yeah, which is something else I didn't understand when I first played the game. It's
actually supposed to. Another conspiracy theory is that it is James. That there's the figure, like the being is the same. It looks like James with the pyramid helmet on his head.
Which would make sense because just like you see with Eddie, who seemed like he had a death wish, and Angela, who seems like she gave up. Like there might be a part of James that wants to die or kill himself for what he's done.
And that's an ending.
It is an ending. Yeah, yeah. So. Yeah, I've always been intrigued by the franchise. And interestingly enough, that demo you mentioned on the PS4, one time my brother-in-law and my sister came to visit, and he was saying like, oh yeah, we gotta check out this demo. I wished I'd known at the time how important that was going to be, because he actually brought his PS5. Or,
maybe PS4.
Wait, maybe it was his PS4. I don't remember.
Yeah, it would have to be his PS4.
He said it was PS4, yeah, okay. Yeah. So maybe it was on my system. Maybe I deleted it off there. Maybe that's what it was.
Yeah, I had it too, and I deleted it off.
So he's had times where he's come to visit and he brought his PS5 before I had mine. So maybe this wasn't one of those times. Maybe this was before that. I remember it was he who suggested downloading it, and I remember playing it, and I was like, I remember thinking, boy, this is really weird, because I don't remember all the details about it, but it was, I don't remember, like when you play through, you could, things would change,
Like I said, it was a new concept of a type of horror, and since then there are whole games that are basically that. They're called looping horror games.
Which is kind of freakish when you think about it, because that's kind of, that sounds like hell. Like there's no escape. Yeah, you're able to try and do stuff, but you end up in the same spot or whatever. That sounds horrifying.
And it's always something, at first it'll start oh, this thing wasn't here before. And then you walk past a door, maybe a scream will happen this time. But the coolest thing about PT is that almost every single time you played it, the events were either changed, out of order, or totally unique. So your playthroughs each time will be different.
Yeah.
Which keeps you on edge, because even if you played it before, you could play it again and it'd be different.
Well, see, I think that if I played it now, I could probably appreciate it now that I have gotten into Silent Hill a little bit, and I kind of understand what that's doing. But I think at the time, I still wasn't real familiar with the franchise or what was happening, and to me it just seemed strange. Dude, I don't know what's going on here. So yeah, that was basically the extent of my experience with the franchise. I'd always been kind of curious about it, because I'd seen, in used video game stores, I'd see the other Silent Hill games, like Silent Hill The Room or Downpour or whatever. But yeah, money and time. That was always sort of a thing. I didn't have really the time to get into them. I didn't really have the money because I think some of them were kind of expensive when you'd see them.
All the PS2 games are expensive.
Yeah.
I sold my copy of 4 on eBay for $120.
How much is Silent Hill 2 selling for?
God, I have not looked, but I can't imagine that it's cheap.
Well, yeah, I would imagine that with the remake being, out and all the attention that it's getting, it's probably gone up, but I don't know how many copies of it they made. I would imagine they made more copies of Silent Hill 2 for the PS2 than they did some of the later games. Just a guess.
This one's 160 complete. Disc only $100.
For Silent Hill 2?
Disc only 110.
Holy moly.
Case no manual 130. Complete 160. Yeah, this one's worth more.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay, for some reason, I just figured that they probably produced more of Silent Hill 2, and so there was probably...
Well, they were a small team, so I'm pretty sure Silent Hill 1 failed.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, so how did we get Silent Hill 2 then?
I don't truly know.
A miracle?
Yeah. Maybe Konami was just pushing to get more games out, but I think that's another reason why the story is so separated from the first game as well, and the gameplay and just basically the whole game is improved and better and different than the first one. And then I think that one was a success, and that's why 3 was rushed to get more people, buying Silent Hill games, and then 4 was like the experiment, it felt like. Because the game is so wildly different.
So 3, you're telling me, was rushed, but it wasn't rushed purely for financial reasons. It was rushed to help give exposure to the Silent Hill franchise.
I think so, yeah. And I also think
that's
it
a
was
slightly more noble
expanding
reason,
on
I'd
the.
say. Okay.
I think it was expanding on the story as well, because it was using the little girl basically from the first game. I don't know how old Heather's supposed to be. I think she's like 16 or something in 3.
Yeah, well, there's at least one of the endings in this game where he's leaving with the girl in...
You can leave with Laura.
Is that the leave ending? I think I'm kind of mixing some endings up.
I think there is a leave with Laura. Oh, I know another ending you probably didn't get. There's one where you...
There's 2 I didn't get, yeah.
I think there's one where you take the body of Mary or something, is in the backseat of your car, and you're sitting in your car, and then she attacks you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's one of the endings.
What's that ending called?
I cannot remember.
Yeah, no, that's one I didn't see. That's wild.
Different
yeah.
Ending, yeah.
Well, okay, so if that's the case, is that created by Silent Hill, or is it like James, who only apparently killed his wife like 3 days ago, actually took his wife's body? And that's like the real...
So people think that because if you look in the back of your car, there is a bundled up blankets.
See, I wondered... Okay, so...
Because there's an ending that revolves around that.
So one thing... Okay, so I think... See, this is why I'm starting to find this to be more interesting as, we kind of, take a step back and look at it, 5,000 feet
right.
and can see as a whole, because... one thing I didn't understand as I played through the game was I was like, okay, well, because at first James is talking about his wife having died 3 years ago. Okay, normal, it happens, right? But when you come to find out, like, oh, he's actually the one that killed her, I was like, okay, well, how did he get away with that? Like, did nobody notice that he murdered her? I mean, I know she was sick, so maybe they thought she died from her sickness.
Because he asphyxiated her technically with a pillow. I think that makes it look more like natural causes, and she was already sick.
And she was already sick,
so there was no real reason for them to investigate, probably.
But I kind of wondered, like, well, still, though, how did he get away with that? Like, nobody noticed that she was murdered, and so that's what I thought, too. I thought, okay, well, maybe, since she was already sick, they just thought, okay, well, we knew it was coming, it finally happened.
So,
but
I got the endings pulled up if you want me to give the names.
Okay, sure,
and the
sure.
brief,
Yeah, let's finish this thought real quick, because I think that, like, based on what you just told me, like, it makes sense, like, okay, if he had murdered her, maybe it wasn't what I was assuming. Yeah, maybe he did run off the body. He was like, oh shit, and that's part of the reason that he had so much blocked out. Okay, yeah, let's hear the ending. So I'm kind of curious here.
So in this list here on GameRant.com, we've got Leave, which is him leaving with. I believe he leaves with Laura. It doesn't give me an actual.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
But he just leaves. In order to get that, you would have to be healing constantly and making sure that, like, all the choices you make throughout the game make it seem like James is trying to fight to survive legitimately. Then you've got In Water, where James essentially gives up. He never even... I don't think he actually reads the last words. I think it's a video of the letter floating in the lake after he drives into the lake and kills himself. Maria, where you leave with Maria. And there's an interesting thing about that. When you're walking to the car with Maria, Maria starts coughing.
Yeah.
And James says, you might want to get that looked at. That is supposed to symbolize that she has the same illness as Mary, that she's going to die too, because he's taking her out of Silent Hill, as far as I can tell anyway. Got a joke ending here. You got UFO, where I believe it's going to be slightly different in the remake, because the original James comes down from the remake. I don't remember if you remember the video, but it's more of a blocky James that comes down.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
It's supposed to be the original James from the PS2 game coming.
I kind of wondered if that's what it was. Yeah, because I was like, this looks like the PS2 model.
Dog ending, definitely canon, where the dog is controlling everything and Silent Hill is unreal. Rebirth, where you collect all of the items to perform some sort of ritual in an attempt to bring Mary back to life.
But it doesn't spell that out, right? I mean, like, you have to...
I don't think technically, but I'm pretty sure I think it's an ending in the original too, and it might be a little different. But that's basically what it is. That's what you're collecting it for.
Yeah, because like we were talking about earlier before we started this, like I remember him saying, like, oh, like, well, I'm going to bring her back, I can do this or something, but you don't actually see much beyond him rowing the boat, and so you kind of have to leave the rest up to your imagination.
There's this stillness bonus ending, which is the last one I need to get. So I don't totally know what happens, but it's an exclusive ending to this game.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one either.
You have to, right after you get the chain, like I can see how to get it. Right after you get the chainsaw, you go. There's I think it's the very first green car you see. You break the window and you grab a key, and then you play the game normally. And then at the hotel, you use the key and a code on a safe, and you have to look at a postcard that you get out of the safe 2 to 3 times, and then finish the game, and then it's that ending. There's Bliss, where you basically drink this drink instead of watching the VHS tape, and I mean, you go bliss. Ignorance is bliss. Like, I don't know if it's him killing himself, if it's him forgetting, because he does watch the tape, I think, and it skips over him killing her, so it's like wiping his brain still. And that's it. So maybe Stillness is the one that... So I swear I saw something where, like, I swear I watched an ending video of Mary coming out of the backseat of the car.
I definitely didn't see that one.
But no one knows which one's truly canon. I think most people are saying leave. I vote dog.
I personally vote Maria. I mean, I like the idea of, him getting to keep Maria. I mean, he goes through all that crap trying to get his wife back, fighting the guilt of what he's done.
Yeah, but he killed her, so, like...
He did. but here's the thing, even though I think James definitely the bad guy in that scenario, it's horrible, but it sounds like it was a pretty horrible situation all around. Because first of all, like, you listen to the things that Mary says, I mean, she was really...
a lot when people are sick like that.
They push you away. Yeah. I'm not saying I blame her at all for feeling that way, because I'm sure there's a lot of emotion, you're freaking out, and you're taking your frustration, your fear out on those around you. I mean, it's easy to do even small things in life, you get stressed out with work or whatever, and you take it out on your wife a little bit or whatever, no one's perfect, but still, though, it sounds like it was a pretty bad situation going on for a really long time. Like, it sounds like it was a pretty prolonged process. Like, she wasn't just sick for a couple of weeks, she was sick for
a while.
Least, yeah. So I can understand him being frustrated and making a mistake and doing something really stupid, because when you see how James is in this game, he seems like a pretty good guy.
I mean, he's reaching his arm down into toilets, random holes in the wall, jumping down black, like, endless pits of nothingness. And he doesn't think, question, mention that it's weird, all to get his wife back.
He seems like a white knight who's truly trying to find / save his wife. Now, so
if you don't know the story, though, that is the biggest, wildest reveal, though, because you've been playing this whole way, and you were fighting, and he's doing this weird, gross shit, and then all of a sudden you find out he kills his wife, and then that, like, is this big reveal to your brain. Like,
but at the same time, though, like, it helps you to sympathize with him, helps you think, like, this seems like a pretty... In fact, I wouldn't even call him a normal guy. He goes above and beyond.
Yeah, his character is supposed to be more or less like that. He's supposed to have been a normal guy until this crazy thing he did.
Yeah, so he seems like a normal guy who's actually a pretty good guy, actually kind of more courageous than the average guy. I mean, he was really... I mean, I think he's doing more than most guys would do to save or help anybody, So I think that gives me a great deal of sympathy for him, because everybody makes mistakes, even though his mistake is pretty huge, granted, but, I just like the idea of him being given a second chance with Maria. So I think that's why that's my favorite one, but truthfully, I think my second favorite ending definitely is the UFO ending.
Oh, come on. Dog, man.
I love it.
God, I love dog.
Don't get me wrong. Listen, don't get me wrong. I mean, the dog ending is great.
I love to imagine that there's just a dog sitting in a booth somewhere controlling the world.
Listen, I like that too. That one's the funniest. But the reason I like the UFO ending is because, like, it just reminds me of like which, I mean, it's definitely what I was going for. But it reminds me of like those, old, like,
the 50s UFO scare stuff.
Yes. And I like the, how it was like saying he was a clone, and like, it took me back like to the old, Spider-Man comics, when Spider-Man, you found out he was a clone, with the jackal, and then the Scarlet Spider was born. I don't know. It just I've always been intrigued by clones and people being cloned. So. I thought it was kind of neat. And I mean, even though, like, I'm trying to get the plot and I was kind of looking at a guide to figure out how to do it, I mean, you would never figure out how to get the UFO ending without a guide.
No, you would have to really be, like, walking everywhere and listening and knowing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, which would be incredibly difficult, because even when you, like, know the spots and you're listening for it, like, it is loud enough you can hear it, but it's not so, like, gratingly obvious that you couldn't also miss it, I think.
Right.
Because, like, if you're, like, in this game, like, there's all sorts of noises. You're kind of on edge for a lot of the game.
Yeah, the sound design is amazing.
So it would be easy to kind of overlook, or certainly if you didn't know what you're doing, you could hear that and be like, "Oh, what was that?" and then not think twice about it.
Or pick up the gem and totally forget you even have it because you
Yeah,
don't
and
use
they're
it.
like, "Huh, I wonder what this is for." But anyways, I think I don't know. I really like that ending. I thought that was fun, and truthfully, I just like the fact there's multiple endings. Period, because it makes the game more interesting in general, but it's also it increases the replayability.
That's why I played it so many times recently.
Yeah, well, in many ways, me too. Now, of course, you know that I like to get platinums, and that's actually another thing I really liked about this game, because I feel like the trophies you get were all fair for the most part, and really not that bad. I mean, certainly not if you compare it to like the Resident Evil franchise, which every time I go into a Resident Evil game, I start working on the platinum, I know it's going to be kicking the balls.
Yeah, never have I ever gotten a platinum in a Resident Evil game. It's not happening.
I've gotten it on almost all of them I played, but it is, man.
I'll get the platinum the next time I play, apparently, because I must have missed one memo somewhere in the game, and that's the only thing left.
That really stinks, man. I feel for you.
So I guess I'll just have to get the stillness ending and all the memos at the same time. Then I'll have all the endings. Then I'll have all the endings, all of the platinum. So there'll be nothing left to do in the game for me.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited that you're getting the platinum because, since I like doing it so much, this is in a way like sort of a very reciprocal kind of game for both of us, because I started playing it because you were telling me how much you loved it. So I was like, okay, so since you're my friend, it's so important to you, like I'll go ahead and get it and play it, right?
Yeah, rip that college dude back in the day. He didn't get you to play it.
He failed the mission.
Yeah.
Guess he wasn't a good enough friend, huh? Actually, that friend, he was recently diagnosed with cancer. Pretty wild, huh? I don't know if it's the same type that Mary had or not, but
well, hopefully his wife doesn't take him out.
Hopefully she doesn't. Yeah, she better be brave for a trip to Silent Hill if she does.
Oh man. Also, there's a funny quote in 3. I just was talking about how James reaches his hand into toilets.
Oh,
I don't mean his hand. I mean he goes shoulder deep.
Dude, it's at least past his elbow.
If you have a save from Silent Hill 2 on your PS2 memory card and you play 3, there's a stall in a bathroom that you go to, and it's got like a little shine, like there's an item there, and you can walk up to it with Heather and it'll ask you, would you stick your hand into the toilet? And then it'll play a cutscene where she's like, ew, that's disgusting. Who would do that and basically look at the camera? I always thought that was so funny.
Well, listen, that is the staple. Like you already mentioned a little bit, like James sticks his hand in toilets repeatedly. He sticks his hand in random holes in the wall, like dark, disgusting holes in the wall where there's clearly disgusting ooze.
Yeah, sometimes it's like
flowing out of it,
ooze
and
bugs.
Yeah, sometimes it's like brightly colored, like it's like bright green or whatever. And you're like, dude, that looks like mutagen from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles oozing out of there. Who knows what that's going to do to your arm?
But then how willing he is to just jump in bottomless pits is wild too. Like he even jumps into his own grave as a bottomless pit.
I find that to be kind of strange, because that's like sticking your hand in a toilet or in a hole in the wall. That's kind of brave. You have no idea what's in there, what you're getting. What could bite you or what kind of filth is in there.
Yeah, but I'm sure people can do it. There's people out there who can do it. But jumping in a bottomless pit.
That's what I'm saying. That's a whole new level. Because James, you can even tell he's like scared, because you have to hit like the action button several times.
Yeah, he leans and looks, and then he gets just closer, and then he jumps.
And then he kind of like he braces himself like he's crapping his pants, but he's like, I'm totes gonna do this. And then he finally jumps. And that was one thing I always kind of felt was strange too. Like I was like, what is happening? Because like James seems to be a real person like us, so he can die, right?
Yeah.
So what happens when he jumps in those holes?
Sometimes he like hits the floor and then wakes up.
Yeah, but it doesn't kill him though.
Yeah, I know, it's really weird.
So is it kind of like, is he going, like, is it like actually like a portal
That's
that
what
like
I'm
his
assuming
deity
is happening.
is?
Yeah.
But to James though, he
but
for all he knows,
he's
he
a
could
layman.
be killing
He's just
himself, right?
Yeah, he has no idea.
It's just by dumb luck that this deity is in control and teleporting him somewhere else.
Where it wants him to be. So like, my favorite jump into a pit was the prison, because you open up a prison cell on the floor, and it's basically like a hallway, but it's a hallway you're dropping down. It looked really cool, because it had all the like little doors and stuff like a prison. I thought that one was my favorite jump down, and then the jumping into his own grave I think was pretty cool too.
I think that the least crazy one of all was towards the end when you're in the hotel. I remember he takes that cart and he pushes over that hole that crumples down. Yeah, exactly.
He jumps down a genuine hole.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only one I'm like, I can kind of understand that, because that's a little bit of a jump, but it's understandable you'd take a leap of faith down something like that, right? But the other ones, like those are like bottomless pits.
The noose, I like the noose one too. I like that whole puzzle, if I'm being honest, after the weights. And I was reading that it actually, which one is not guilty changes, so the poems slightly change when you play it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's not always the same person that you're absolving of guilt because they don't belong there.
Yeah, so especially this last one I played through, I fell down the wrong hole a couple times.
Yeah, you just fall into a
And
pit of monsters, basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it seemed like both times I fell, it was like the same pit.
Yeah, you can brute force that. So you can brute force that puzzle if you want to.
Yeah.
You can just keep grabbing nooses till it takes you to the
Until
right
you
one.
luck out, yeah.
Which is different from the original. In the original, you have to. Oh fuck! It's kind of complicated. You have to go into one room. There's a glimpse of the past of it in the remake, where you go into this room and it's like a cell in the labyrinth. You have to go down a hallway into one room, read stuff, go into the other one, and then pull the right noose down. I forget, you have to go somewhere else and do something else, and that'll decide whether it was the right one or not. It's like a pain in the ass.
Well, I wonder if that would be different too if you picked a more difficult puzzle setting.
They do change, I think. I don't think that one did, because my last playthrough I did light because I was just trying to get every collectible, and it didn't. I don't think it changed for me.
Yeah, because when I played through, I played with the light puzzle setting.
I know what it is. It's how many words are on the poems. So on light, it's like 2 little sentences. On normal, I think it's 3, and then on hard, it's like 4 or something.
Oh, but it doesn't actually change the nature of the puzzle
Of the
itself.
puzzle itself,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
It just makes it more complicated to read through.
Oh, okay.
But I like that. That's probably one of my favorite puzzles in the whole game. I really like that puzzle. And then in the morgue, did you notice the feet twitch?
Wait, the morgue, the feet twitch?
Yeah, there's only a morgue for a split second. When you pull the noose, it's the right noose. You go down. You end up in a room with like just doors. You walk through a door, and it's the morgue. And then if you go to look at one of the people, the feet twitch and it makes a noise, and your flashlight flashes.
No, I did not notice that actually.
Yeah.
not that I'm
It makes
recalling
like
off the
a
top of my head. At
groan.
least.
It's like a roar, and then his foot goes like, and that's all that happens there. Then you jump down like 3 pits, and then you're in the next area.
Yeah, no, I don't remember that off the top of my head, but I know the area you're talking about. I just don't recall that specific thing happening while I was there.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. Just a cool little thing.
It's a cool little detail. I feel like there's a lot of neat little details like that in the game.
Yeah, there's probably a bunch I've never even seen.
Yeah, probably same here, because like I mean, there's times like you go by doors and like you can hear something behind them, or somebody will say something.
Yeah.
But you never get in there, or
There's one room that still perplexes me. It's in an apartment, but it's not the it's not the like main building apartments. It's a little apartment, and it's where you have to get the jukebox button out of the hole in the wall. Well, there's a room where James will slowly open the door, but he can't open it all the way, and he gets all this black goop on his hand and he hears these noises.
Yeah.
That I
know
have
exactly
no
what you're talking
idea
about.
what's going on with
Yeah,
that
because
room
if
still.
you're going for the UFO ending, that door is like right before you go outside.
Yeah, you go outside
and you have
and
to
you
pull
use
the thing out the first
yeah.
time. That blue diamond or pendant or whatever it is.
Yeah, so after I've seen that, once I've seen that video once, I basically never did it again because it doesn't do anything. And as far as I can tell, it doesn't contribute to the endings. It's just a random door that he can't go in.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, on my first playthrough, I tried to open that, and I did get the Maria ending. So it apparently doesn't stop you from getting that, I can tell you that.
Well, I think there might be some lore in the building. I know that when I was reading through one of the guides, it had mentioned that maybe the person's whose apartment that is and why you're getting the jukebox button there had something to do with the button being missing to begin with. But what happened to him, and why is there black goop? And why can't I open the door?
Yeah, I wish the game would explain that.
It's just an
curious.
Interesting thing. I don't know. It's really weird.
But, sometimes it's funny how mystery works, because there's definitely beauty with mystery. So sometimes when everything's explained, I mean, that can be good depending on how it's done, but other times it's kind of nice to have mystery because it makes you wonder. It adds to a sense of,
Yeah, it makes me think about the game all the time.
Yeah, exactly. It gives you something to think about and ponder about, and as we're talking here, we can talk about different theories or potential things it could mean.
This is one of those games that I would put on the list of, is video games art? Yes, Silent Hill 2 Remake. No question.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of that sort of thing, like, number one, what do you think of the art style and the overall quality of the graphics? And two, what were your favorite parts of the game? Because I definitely have some favorite sections myself here, but I want to hear yours first.
Graphically, I do like it graphically, but I think it's missing something, at least in the characters. Like,
Really?
they look, I don't want to say weird, but maybe I'm just so used to the games nowadays, or maybe I'm used to the Resident Evil remakes or something, where the characters they look real almost. In this game, they don't quite look real. Not that they don't look real at all, but they don't look how I would what I was expecting them to look like.
They do look different.
Yeah, they don't, like, James doesn't look real necessarily. I do think it still looks great, and I love the costume. I love Maria's overall overhaul. I think she looks way better in this game. Her
I agree.
outfit in the original was a product of its time. It was
Hmm.
literally Britney Spears' outfit, I think. I like her redesign a lot. And as you mentioned right before we started, you saw a picture on the screen over here of Laura, and you saw her new design, and it is wildly different.
That.
She looks closer to real, I
Mhm.
think, than anybody else in the game.
Well, the thing I would say, since you're talking about that, is I personally think that the characters in this game look pretty good.
Yeah, I
But
think they
the
look
only
good. I just don't. Wasn't quite what I was expecting.
the only complaint I would have, and it's not really much of a complaint for me, like right here we see Maria,
Maria's,
the
yeah.
original, and
Oh,
the
there's
new one,
Laura.
and there's what
Terrifying
what
Laura.
Laura looked like in the original. Like I think having no basis of comparison at all, like when I just started playing this game, like I thought that the characters looked great actually, like they look good. But when you go back and you look at pictures of like what they looked like in the original,
Oh, it's night and day.
it's not just that like it's an upgrade. It's that they look almost like different people.
I think
Um,
some of that was intentional, though. I think their goal was to try to make them look more like a real person, but I don't think they quite got it.
Well, I mean, like it's definitely like a graphic upgrade, but it just I don't necessarily see like with James for example, like I just don't feel like it looks like the same character.
Well, I saw the original version that they were gonna release. Well,
Mhm.
I saw some of the original like pictures when they were first talking about remaking the game.
Mm-hmm.
That James looked really bad. So this is definitely an improvement over the James they were gonna come
Yeah.
out
So like standing it by itself, like I think that they look great. Like James, I think that his character looks awesome. The little girl, I mean, I think that like the way that they do her expressions and everything in game looks great. Since I'm a real big fan of canon, like the only complaint I think truthfully, like the biggest complaint I would have overall is just looking back at the original and just like wow, like why do they look so different? Why if I didn't know, why could I not tell this is the same character?
Well, I think they look believable, and I think that's cool to me.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important part. They're believable. I clearly got lost in it and obsessed with the world.
I would agree that they're believable characters. Pretty well done.
For favorite parts, it's anytime Angela comes on screen. Yeah, anytime
Of course.
Maria's on screen. Because they just make the game for me. Those two characters are what the game is. I mean, Laura's cool, but I know she's there looking for Mary, but I don't really understand why she's there, where her parents are. Like,
Yeah.
I have too many questions revolving around her existence. It doesn't make much sense to me. But anytime that Maria's on screen or Angela's on screen, it's really interesting to me. And I mean, I like Pyramid Head scenes too. Like, I really like when you walk out of the door on the roof of the hospital, and he just grabs you
He's
by your
there
throat and
waiting
just
for you.
yeets you through the floor and just looks down at you. That part was cool. I like Heaven's Night, the strip club too. I really like the line where if you walk up to the stripper pole, with James, Maria will say, "Oh, you gonna strip for me up there, big boy? I'd pay to see that." Something like that.
Hmm.
I thought that was funny.
I gotta say, one of my favorite parts of the whole game is the fight with the Pyramid Heads at the end. Like that fight
The Devil
was
Pyramid
so
Heads?
epic.
Yeah.
Well, for one thing, it's not just the fight itself; it's the fact that like the music playing and everything. It's so epic.
There
like,
is some sick music in this game.
Yeah, and like it's the fact like the way the Pyramid Heads look, like it's a cool fight. The fact there's two of them, and they're
Well, they're spears too, so they have long weapons
Yeah.
and they're fast, which is not how Pyramid Head had been the entire game. So it's a whole different dynamic you're dealing with.
yeah, no. So it's just like
They do share health though, in case you didn't know that.
Oh, I didn't know
yeah,
that.
they share health. You can
That-
only
that-
attack. You can just attack one repeatedly. It'd be fine.
Okay, yeah. Now that makes sense because I assumed that it was. I wasn't thinking that specifically, but I thought that maybe it was like a matter of just tallying up a certain amount of damage
Yeah.
before the fight would end. It just I don't know. Like every time I fought those guys, like just the music and everything, I'm so pumped up. I'm so excited to be doing it.
It is a really good
So-
battle. I like that
so-
battle way better than Mary or
I-
whatever you want to call it at the end. That final boss pisses me off.
I think that fight with the two Pyramid Heads is by far my favorite boss fight. I would actually say that the fight with Mary at the end is my second favorite fight, and the reason I like it is because throughout the whole game, I am doing my best to not waste ammo. Like I'm doing my best. Like I run across to.
Her moths are infuriating.
Oh really? Like I didn't have any
Oh
trouble with the
my
mods actually.
God.
Because this is the impression I got with the mods. Like if you keep moving and you're dodging a lot, like they won't bother you. If you stand still,
Maybe I'm just an aggressive player in video games.
Well,
I always deal with shit. You're like that. That didn't bother me. I just moved. You say that all the time. And I'm like, maybe I'm just too aggressive.
okay. So I guess this happened twice with this game now, right? Like the fight with Eddie, and
Yeah, because
and
Eddie
you're talking
pisses
about
me
the
off too.
mods.
Because I try to brute force him. I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So Eddie's fight was definitely my least favorite. It was kind of annoying. But when I fought him with guns, I don't know if I got
Thematically
lucky.
important, but yes, annoying to play.
Yeah, so when I fought him the first time, I don't know if I got lucky or what, but like we were talking about earlier, like I didn't have that much trouble defeating him. It wasn't really that annoying. It took a little bit of time. You can't really brute force it like you can most of the other bosses because you have to wait for him to appear, then you have to shoot him and wait for him to reappear. Three different sections of the fight, right? But
Well, if we're talking bosses, my favorite's Abstract Daddy.
well, my favorite Statue Pyramid Heads by far. I loved it. It was just so good.
I would definitely put that up there. It's probably my second. I like that.
But yeah, so the reason, so Eddie's was the worst. When I fought with the chainsaw, that was an exercise and frustration because like I would see Eddie and like so many times because I couldn't just shoot him like I could in the first fight. So I'd see him and I'd be trying to get to him, and so many times he'd blast me once or even twice before I could get to him, and then I'd get to him and I'd be like trying to hit him with the chainsaw, and I'd miss somehow.
Again, or he'd
And then like I'd be trying to move James, and James, because he has to go through the whole animation and then regain his footing before you can really move him again.
Right.
It would get so frustrating. So usually I get hit once or even twice before I could regain my footing, and by that point Eddie would have ran off. That was definitely the most frustrating one. So my second favorite boss fight though was actually the final boss. I actually enjoyed fighting her. So I don't know if I finished my thought, but the reason is because like throughout the whole game I'm trying to conserve ammo. Like if I'd come across a nurse, either trying to take her out with just my pipe, or maybe shooting her once and then taking her out with a blunt force object for the rest of the way.
That's how I played the whole game.
Yeah, me too. So then when I got to the final boss fight, I'm like, well, this is it. I mean, I either use this ammo now or never.
Yeah, I've got
so
all
I
this
was
rifle
finally
ammo, all this shotgun ammo.
So finally I was able to whip out my guns and just use them with reckless abandon. And because she takes so many shots, in three different sections of the fight.
Yeah.
Again, kind of like Eddie, she's like a 3-section fight.
It's a running theme actually, because even Abstract Daddy is too.
He was.
Well, no, he might be. He actually is probably more like 5.
I was gonna say like he's at least 4 or 5.
Yeah,
I think he's
like 5 actually.
Now, I mean, a lot of those times you run into him, it doesn't take that many hits for it to kind of move on, but it's at least 4 or 5 sections, yeah.
I guess you're right.
But so I found it to be fun just because I was able to just, use ammo with reckless abandon. Like, I didn't have to care about conserving anything. Didn't have to bull crap around with trying to go up there and beat her with a pipe or even a chainsaw. Well, I mean, maybe I would use a chainsaw, like when I did it the way I did, but, that's actually the funny thing, too. Like, when you're fighting her, like, with you're trying to go through with
the chainsaw's way easier.
With no bullets, yeah, okay,
oh my God.
like
I
when
just dodge repeatedly up to her, then hit her with a chainsaw once or twice, and it'd be done.
I remember specifically the second stage because she falls down.
Oh yeah, that one's
like,
annoying. But
you're kind of like looking up, like you see like the barks where she's dinking around above you, and then she'll so you're kind of backing up, keep an eye on her, and then she drops down right in front of you.
Because you're basically fighting flesh lips again.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, it's just a flesh lips battle again.
But then she drops down. I'm just like, yum! Like I hit her before she can even do anything,
right.
And it's like, boom! It was over. The second phase was over, and then I'm in the third phase. Now I think that the first and third phases were a little more difficult just because you had to dodge and try not to get hit. But really, if you're using a chainsaw, it was really a pretty easy fight.
I think my only complaint with her, in my opinion, is it basically just feels like another flesh lips battle, but longer and tougher, and with the stupid moths.
Well, the second phase, you're right, basically is.
I did like that change, actually, if you want to talk about boss changes. In the original Flesh Lips battle, I think there was 3 or 4 of them that you had to fight.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then in this one, it was just the one. I like the way it was done. And then they also added those guys who hang... God, what are they called?
I know what you're talking about.
They hang from under.
Those big kind of cylinder hands, right? But
yeah, they're lips, I think, is what they are. Because for some reason, Silent Hill has an obsession with
lips,
mouths and lips. There's definitely more. Anyway, they're only really killable if you have the chainsaw besides the boss. But they added that too in front of the fireplace in the hotel. You had to fight that guy.
Oh, well, so that was new to the remake?
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember it being in the original.
Yeah, because that was basically like, because there's regular enemies are like that, but the one you fight in the hotel in that conference room
is way tougher. Yeah. The other one, well, no, I would say the ones underground that are under you are tougher until you get the chainsaw. Then you can just smack and be done.
Well, they're certainly tougher in the sense that, because...
I didn't even fight them. I would just run.
Well, like,
In my
are you
first
talking about that
playthrough.
spot where you have to leave all your equipment and then go down the elevator?
Oh yeah, there's that
Because
spot
those
too.
are
Yeah.
because you can't kill them because you have nothing to fight them with.
Yeah, no,
Really.
but I mean in the other spots too. Like, so there's the red rooms in the labyrinth. If you can wait those out, you don't have to kill those guys. The
Oh,
only
you're talking
enemies
about when
don't
you
have
go
to
in there,
fight.
like it turns red, and all those enemies pop up, and
Yeah, so there's
Oh.
those, and then there's another spot where they're at in the labyrinth. I think it's the rotten room, where a lot of the hallways are just them under
oh,
you.
they're infested with those. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I don't fight them
Oh, me neither. I just
until I
ran.
had the chainsaw. Once I had the chainsaw, smack one lip, smack the other lip, they fall, they die, it's done.
Well, even once I got the chainsaw, like I didn't really fight him that much. I basically ran through because if you know one's coming, if you just you dodge, and like when they whip, I don't know what it is, their tongue or whatever that comes
Yeah.
out, like you can dodge that and you just keep on moving and you can avoid them. But one thing I noticed is like when you try and hit them, like if you get lucky and you hit the one lip and then the other, they fall. But if you miss, then that's when they can puke at you or whatever that tentacle is can come and
they,
hit you.
they
So,
definitely hurt you.
so to me, I always felt like it wasn't really worth the risk.
Sometimes it was worth me just not having to deal with them anymore, especially in the rotten room area, because you're running around looking for the right hallways you have to go
Yeah.
down, and I just don't want to fucking deal with them.
Yeah, well, I mean that makes sense
The
actually.
ones early in the game that show up in like the tunnels, I think
Yeah.
this is the first one you see when you're following Laura. Those ones I just ran past every time. I didn't even bother.
Well, you know what's really funny? Like the first time I played through, like I was in that tunnel, I couldn't see anything. Like even with my flashlight, like I
You're not
realized
really
that.
supposed to.
Well, I realized like I was like, okay, I think that maybe I should turn up the brightness on the game. So when I played through the second time, I upped the brightness, and I found myself actually enjoying the game a lot more because I could actually see a little bit better. Like the first time I played through, like I had it way too dark.
My TV has HDR, so I go through all the HDR settings. As much as I love this laptop, the screen on it totally blows. So when I'm like, say Wifey Sauce is watching TV, I'll stream it to this, and then I have to go in and readjust the settings and make them way brighter because this I can't see anything in most games. I have to, like when I emulate PS2 games, I have to go into special settings and force the game to be brighter than it's allowed, just to
yeah,
see.
yeah.
So I did a lot of messing with brightness throughout my entire time I played it.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah, because we hadn't actually talked about that before, but I think I'd mentioned to you that I enjoyed my second playthrough a lot more, but I think that's the first time I'm actually mentioning if that was a big part of the reason why. Because, like, especially if, well, I have kids, so usually I was playing this at night, but a few times, my kids are out with their grandparents or whatever, so I'd be playing in the afternoon, and that's when I really started to realize, like, holy crap, the brightness is a big problem, because during the day, when there was light, like, shining in the windows and stuff, like, I could hardly see the game at all.
But I bet
it was rough.
During your very first playthrough, with it being slightly darker, and
Massively
you not
darker.
expecting anything, I bet you were way more creeped out. I bet you were way more nervous, especially of mannequins, because they don't make noise on your radio. So,
Not
so
until they start moving, at least, yeah.
those are my favorite enemies in the game. At first, they were the most infuriating fucking things I'd ever met, but then I realized, as I started thinking more about the actual character, they're really well programmed with the way they work and how creepy they are, because there are scenes where like you'll walk into a hallway and it will just creepily like and it makes this like noise like an insect right past you and hide somewhere or under something, and then you turn a corner and it's
crawl
like
up the wall.
blah. Oh yeah,
Or
when you
even
get the
on the
spider
ceiling.
ones later, the spider mannequins.
Yeah,
Those
yeah.
motherfuckers,
Like
dude,
when
they'll
you're-
jump
when you're in
off
the-
the ceiling on you.
Dude, I was saying, when you're in the prison, those things are everywhere.
Yeah, they're the
And
most
they'll-
annoying thing in the prison.
But no, I do like the mannequin bad guys, actually. I like them a lot better than those bags of flesh that,
Oh,
you know...
I think they're actually literally called something like that.
Oh.
No, those are called living figures. Living,
Okay.
Yeah, they're basically like a straight jacket flesh creature.
For some reason, I didn't really like those as much, especially the ones that were spiky and could puke on you, and they burst,
Oh,
with like a cloud of...
I feel like all
nauseous
those
gas
ones
can
that
kill 'em.
burst is just me wasting time. I just back up and I gotta stand and wait.
They're pretty annoying. That's probably my least favorite enemy in the whole game, is those guys.
Everybody loves the
Oh.
nurses. It's a staple of Silent Hill. It's a badass character design.
Well, they're creepy, they're terrifying, kind of
They're
sexy
creepy,
in a way.
terrifying, and hot, like they're supposed to be. All the enemies are supposed to represent, besides Fear Minute, it's supposed to represent James's sexual frustration. That's why
Which
they look
makes
like
sense.
that.
I mean, if you're
He
going
hasn't
years...
had, like potentially years or however long, And it's also his guilt of looking at, say, so the nurses, while they're faceless, it's his guilt of looking at them as sexual beings because he can't have sex with his own wife. So he's used to seeing these nurses come in, and he's thinking about stuff like that.
Which again, that's one of the things that makes James, kind of a relatable and sympathetic figure too, because like who doesn't understand like what as a guy at least, probably even as a girl I'd imagine, but like as a guy, like who wouldn't imagine, or who can't understand the frustration that would go along with that? Doesn't mean
and
you don't
the guilt and
doesn't
shame
mean,
that he's feeling too.
It doesn't exactly like it doesn't mean you don't love your wife, but I mean I think it's a natural human emotion to be frustrated with the entire situation.
Right.
Whether it be the sexual aspect or just the way your wife's pushing you away, or you just the frustration with your wife being sick in general, the fear, the loss, the frustration that goes along with it.
But that's another thing I love about this game is that there is not another game I've ever played that tackled any kind of themes like that. Even the other Silent Hill games, none of them are like this. This is the only one like it.
Yeah, it does tackle a lot of the conditions of the human psyche.
Yes.
Like why you feel the way you do, what causes it, root causes.
Ways you may act due to that.
Exactly. Like how are you going to respond to that? I mean, with James in particular, it's great because you can see all the different kind of potential outcomes that come from how you can choose to react to it. Now, in his case, he'd already killed his wife, so there's no going back on that. But
yeah, there's not really any going back on that.
There's basically the way where you move on in a variety of ways. There's you give up. The way where you go completely insane and you go the pet cemetery route and you're like, okay, I'm going to revive her, type of ending.
Well, that's why Maria looks the way she does too. Is it's supposed to be an overly sexualized version of his own wife because of his sexual frustration. So it's still so it looks like her, but it's sexualized for like maybe things he was thinking of or things he missed or whatever. It was more. That's why she's flirty too. A little bit, especially when you first meet her, she's definitely flirty.
Oh yeah, and she there's that one scene. I forget where you were at, but remember it was kind of raining. You're inside. It was kind of raining on you, and she makes.
That's Hospital Part 2, when the hospital is the Otherworld Hospital.
Yes,
it's raining from the ceiling.
Yeah, because that was right before you walked in the pool or something area. I forget.
Yeah, you walk. Yeah, it is. You walk up to the pool area with Maria. It's very close to when Maria dies for the first time.
Yeah, so then Maria says, oh, she's like, Rain, she's like, how romantic. And James is like, what? What are you talking about? And she's like, I'm just goofing around, James, and she's like, what'd she say? Humor me, right?
Yeah, humor me. I think is exactly what she says.
Like, oh, sorry.
I actually really feel bad for her because she's only created to go after James. All she seeks in life is James. And James basically more or less rejects her the whole game. Or there's the scene right before the scene you were just talking about where you find her and he's like, oh, Mary. And then she's like, what?
That was in the hospital in the basement, right?
Yeah, and she freaks out because she's like, oh, you're not happy to see me? He's like, no, it's not that. It's just, and he fumbles.
I thought it was my wife.
Because they look and sound the same. So
yeah, except for Maria has blonde hair and Mary has, she's a brunette, has brownish hair.
Oh, you might be right on that. I think that might be the only difference. The voice actor is the same too, the same way in the original game.
Their face is definitely the same. Yeah. I mean, they dress different too, obviously.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
but as far as
Maria's
physically,
supposed to be a stripper.
Yeah. No, actually, the reason I like Maria, I think, is because she's kind of a likable character, but she kind of adds like a damsel in distress element to the game. Like you're trying to protect her and keep her alive. I mean, like, even like right before you fight the two pyramid heads, and like they kill her. James is like, he's so distressed he couldn't save her. He's like, no.
But then he also thinks and he says, I know what you are. I don't need you anymore. I just remembered another scene with Maria too, where you have to open the freezer, and she's like, "Oh, you need me to help you? Aren't you a big, strong, hunky man or something like that? You need a little damsel like me to open this."
He did not see the humor in that either.
No, he literally was just like, "Can you just?"
He's like, "Can we do this?
Can we just open this?" In the original, you actually find that, and you can click on it before you have Maria, and it says something like, "You need 2 people to open this," or "It's too heavy," or something, and then you have to come back. Whereas in this one, the remake, you only discover it after you have Maria with you.
Yeah, I just want to get back real quick to how dark the game was first when I played through it. I think that it probably was good, like you were saying, that I played through it the first time with it being so dark because it was so much creepier. Because you remember like a few times, like when I was playing through my first playthrough, I texted you, I was like, dude, this game's scary.
Yeah,
well, dude,
you
like
did.
it was the first one I played through. I don't know why, but like there were a few times, like I was up late at night by myself, and I was actually like, dude, this game's kind of scaring the crap out of me.
I'm not gonna lie, there were some parts that made me jump, and I just texted you the other day. I'm like, I played through this game 5 times, and this part made me jump again. I don't know why.
Yeah, so So then, I don't know if it was the fact that I was playing through it again, so like I was a little more used to it, or if it was the fact that I upped the brightness. But the second time didn't freak me out as much, and I enjoyed it overall a little bit more. I think that because I think for me, like I like to understand what's going on for me to enjoy a game. At least like what's going on in the game world, from the character's perspective. And the first time I played, I was like, I have no idea what's going on. This is confusing. It's so dark and scary. And
Yeah, I remember your first messages to me seemed like you were still on the fence about it.
I
For
was
most of the time
no,
you were
I
playing
was
it.
I was actually, but then for
But then
some
you were
reason,
like, I'm gonna beat it just because I've already started and
Yeah.
you made me buy it.
yeah, but no, but the second time I played through, I enjoyed it a lot more. Like I said, I do think the brightness had something to do with it. I think that it was having a better understanding of maybe what was happening as
Yeah.
opposed to just feeling so confused. Because usually with like a Resident Evil game, for example, or even like The Last of Us, like even if you don't know the whole story, you have a pretty good idea
understand
of
that
what's happening.
zombies are around, the world is
Exactly.
over,
Yep.
you're fighting to survive.
Exactly.
Silent Hill is very confusing. Even once you know what's going on, it's still a little confusing. At least
Yeah.
to me.
But so then, but still we have a better, at least I have a better idea of what's going on,
Kind
and
of
all that,
what's
and it's
going
like.
on, yeah.
And so it's like, okay, so that helped me enjoy it a little bit more. So I don't know, just everything about the second playthrough was better. I really enjoyed having the chainsaw, because it made everything easier.
Well, that was supposed to. So your first playthrough was supposed to be the scary, tough playthrough, and then a lot of things open after you beat it. So like, there's a chunk of those endings you can't get until you've beaten the game once.
Oh yeah, they're exclusive to New Game Plus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the game actually kind of forces. If you want to know more about the game, it forces you to replay it anyway. They make it easier with the chainsaw, probably because you're going to be playing it, in this case,
Yeah.
8 times at least.
Yeah. Yeah. Although with some of the endings, you can reload and do it again.
Yeah,
like
if
the dog
if
ending,
you've got the
UFO
right stuff
ending,
in your
and the
inventory in the
rebirth
hotel.
ending.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did all those on the same one.
Yeah, I did a chunk too, like it was like 3 endings at once.
Yeah, and actually with the first playthrough, I was actually able to get 2 off that one too, because the first time I played through, I got the re-ending, and then I heard that like it's with some of the endings, not all of them, but some of them, like how it determines which ending you get, like certain things you do or don't do, like it gives you like an ending value.
Yeah,
And
there's a point system.
Yeah, so if you beat the game, like in this case, like you get the re-ending, and then you reload your game and like go right back into it without turning the game off, like it takes that original value and it says, oh, well, you got that when you beat the game just like a couple minutes ago or whatever, so we're going to give you, regardless of how many points you have, like it just gives you a different ending. And
It treats items like that too, interestingly. So there's a few
Really?
items throughout the game, like ammo and health and stuff, that is always there in that position. But there's a bunch of other ones where if you're getting hurt a lot, you'll get health more. If you're using a lot of ammo, you'll get that ammo more, etc. Like it weighs out what you're actually doing the entire game.
I really, really like that, like, 'cause it feels like it's like a more of a dynamic, living, breathing kind of world that is
Right.
actually affected by and responding to
And
how
what
you
you're
play.
doing, yeah, it's giving you what you need when you need it. Basically.
Yeah. So like if you're playing through and like you're low on ammo, like the game will magically
Yeah,
be
Resident
more
Evil don't
generous.
do that though. Yeah, you run out of ammo in Resident Evil, you were SOL.
Well,
in this
well-
game, if you run out, you'll find some probably in the next 10 minutes.
Well, see, I think that's the reason I so instinctively play these games like on massive conservation mode.
That's what I did too until I found that out. Then I used the chainsaw, but by the time I found that out, I was like, oh, well, I can just play around with whatever I want in a way. I mean, it'll still make it tougher if you're just
You're
careless.
just wasting it, yeah.
Because you still have to wait to find it, or in some cases, you'll go into a room and the only thing in there is the purpose of that room is to replenish you. There'll be a mannequin in there, and if you suck for whatever reason and you wasted all your stuff, potentially that mannequin can kick your ass.
That's the thing with this
They're
game.
incredibly powerful, dude.
Any enemy in this game could kick the crap out of you if you're not careful.
Yeah, if you're not paying attention, yeah, that's it, dude. Mannequins frustrated me at first because they're fast, they dodge, they hide, and then when you go to get to them, they'll pop out and attack you immediately. So when the first time I was playing it, they were making me mad. They don't have a lot of health, so when you do start hitting them, you can kill them pretty fast, but they deal a lot of damage, and they will kill you really quickly.
Yeah, well, when I first started playing the game, I forget how deep into it I was when I found out you could dodge. But once I figured out you could dodge, I was like, dude, this
Well,
game
that's
is...
wild. I didn't know you didn't know that.
Well, because I was just learning the game, so I don't know, like, how deep... I wasn't super deep into it. Once I realized you could dodge, I was like, dude, like, it was such a game changer because, like, really, it doesn't make you invincible, but, like, it makes the game go from hard mode to, like, easy mode once you get that,
I
because...
wouldn't say easy mode, but
I would say in a way, because like when you go up against bosses, like even with them, like you can dodge almost everything they do.
Everything he does is so clunky. So even if you dodge, sometimes he doesn't dodge where I want him to go, or he doesn't, or maybe I dodge at the wrong time, and then that happens. It's not the savior that it should be.
Well, I don't know. Like I really felt like for me, like it really was. I mean, it
I don't want
really.
to play dodgy games though. The only game I think I played that with dodging that I actually used is God of War.
Well, okay, so the only other game I can really think of that had it, and it worked really well in that game too, was Resident Evil 3 Remake. Now, the original Resident Evil 3 had a dodge mechanic that wasn't nearly as good. It could work sometimes, I think. With the remake, the dodge feature was incredible. But I think, truthfully, because I got the platinum in that game, so I know it fairly well too.
That probably translated. That's why it was so easy. You translated your dodge mechanic.
Yeah, it could be, yeah, but in this game, like, it was, I mean, it was, the dodge mechanic was great. It worked really well for me, and it was fantastic. And I think you said that there was no dodge in the original, right?
No, yeah, there's no, I don't think there's a dodge in the original, because
Yeah,
it's
so-
mostly tank controls, unless you switch it to 3D, but it's still weird controls.
I can't imagine playing this game without dodging. I mean, I suppose if I had played it without ever, like, if the dodge feature was never there, I probably got used to it, but now that I've been using it, like, I cannot imagine doing it without dodging. Because, like, you can, you know, I got to the point, like, I go up against, like, sometimes, like, it could be 2 or 3 enemies, and, like, I could, with dodging and, you know, timing my attacks right, like, I could easily kill all 3 without any damage. Okay, yeah, I'll just say that this game was actually a pretty pleasant surprise for me. I'm glad that you introduced me to it, and you know, I'm really hoping that this isn't just a rebirth for the Silent Hill franchise. So I'm looking forward to seeing what else they do with the Silent Hill series.
In general, yeah.
Because I think you said they're remaking what, 1 and 3?
Yeah, they're supposed to be working on, the rumor is 1 and 3 because they go together.
Because like from the few pictures and images I've seen of Silent Hill 3, like that game looks like
That game is cool.
it looks really good.
Yeah, I like it.
So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with that.
You spend a lot of time in malls and amusement parks.
Yeah, like it looks really cool.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to play through that. I actually no, if they make a remake, I for sure want to play through the remake.
Yeah, I'm buying them.
Yeah, no question. You know, I'm also hoping this is a little bit of a rebirth for Konami. You know,
yeah, because all they've been doing is making pachinko machines with Silent Hill written on it.
or Castlevania.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous. You have these great franchises that you're just letting lie dormant for what? You know, like you go the route of Capcom, like we've talked about before. You
Yeah,
know?
we talked about it plenty of times on the podcast already.
Exactly, you know. So I'm really hoping that Konami will see this and say, oh, you know, there is a lot of interest in Silent Hill and maybe these old franchises. So whether they do it themselves or they outsource it to another company, like they did with this one, right?
Yeah.
Like just revive the franchise. Well, I don't care if they're remakes at this point, just to get the ball rolling, or if they make new games in the franchises. But I want to see, you know, more Metal Gears. I want to see more Silent Hills. I want to see more Castlevanias.
Right.
I want to see these franchises come back in the same way Capcom is doing with their franchises.
Well, I'm hoping this will come up. I mean,
So that's really the thing that excites me the most. I mean, I liked the game, had a lot of fun with it, but that is really what I'm most excited for, is hoping that this is a wake-up call for Konami, and it's the first of many more great things to come.
Well, they're supposedly working on Silent Hill F, and they're working on remaking 1 and 3s. I'm excited that I finally took the time to get into something that I always had a passing interest in. The remake was the perfect time, and then I got obsessed, so I'm very thankful for this game. I loved it.
You know,
it's in my top list of games I've ever played, for sure.
Okay, real quick, the very last thing, I guess, that we've been talking for 2 hours somehow, I still didn't get to everything. The one thing I wanted to mention is that, you know, I really like, well, there's several areas I liked. I like the hospital, because, like, it felt like you're walking into, like, a hospital that had been abandoned since, like, the 1930s or something.
Yeah.
I love the feel of it. Like, it felt really cool. Like, it seems like it's exactly what you'd want to find if you go into, like, some old abandoned town, or like, some old small town that has, like, an abandoned hospital, and you break in and explore it.
That's what it would be, yeah.
That's what you'd want to see inside. Hopefully minus the nurses, you know, but and the enemies trying to kill you. I think my favorite part, what I love the most, a close number 2, or no, I mean, that was a close number 2. My number 1 was the hotel at the end, right?
Yep.
Like, I really like the feel of that. You know, some places were dark, some places were bright. It just
Parts of it are supposedly based off of a real hotel, and it's the same hotel that was in the Shining movie.
yeah, which is pretty cool to have that kind of connection.
Yeah,
If
that
it's
lobby
loose, it's
area.
kinda-
I mean, it's not like 1-to-1, but that whole lobby area is based off that real hotel.
Once you get to the hotel, like, it's like something we were talking about too. So that's right after the labyrinth, right? Is it the labyrinth, and then then you go on the.
And you fight Eddie.
You fight Eddie, and then you're on the river,
on the boat,
and then you get to the hotel.
Yeah.
So it's just like that extreme contrast of like just how dark and scary the labyrinth is, and then you take a little boat ride. You're at the hotel, which is a little more bright and just a completely different atmosphere. Like I really enjoyed the hotel. Okay, those are my closing comments then.
All right, well, thank you guys. Hopefully you enjoy. Goodbye.
All right, adios.